Thank you so much, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Helen Grant. I am the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Richland School District 2. You heard from my superintendent, Dr. Barron Davis, earlier in the day. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in opposition to the bills that are before you, especially to all provisions that limit the materials used by our teachers, that may be interpreted to limit how history is taught, that limits teaching current events, that require the adoption of only one perspective on our country, that limit equity, and that deny affirmation of all students, regardless of their gender identity. There was a comment made just a little while ago about what should this committee do, what bills should we put into place. You are the committee, you are the legislators, you don't have to put any bills in place. And I'm submitting to you this evening that there is already language in place that will take care of the concerns that have been expressed to you over the course of these hearings. I'm going to give you examples from the Richland School District 2 policy manual of language that will address the concerns that have been brought to you. The district will support the academic standards set out in the state adopted curricula, as well as rules, regulations, and requirements of state law. The board expects the administration to implement a curriculum with state content standards. Students will be provided the opportunity to develop intellectual curiosity, critical thinking, and problem-solving abilities during their school years in such a manner that they will be used throughout their lifetime. As to supplementary materials selection and adoption, the board believes that the availability of a carefully selected and widely varied collection of materials enhances opportunities to acquire knowledge, learn how to learn, and learn for self-cultivation. The principal and/or his designee must approve supplementary materials. Richland 2 has a policy that specifically addresses teaching about controversial or sensitive issues. Students should have an opportunity to examine controversial or sensitive issues within the context of their formal education experiences. Those are defined as a point or a matter about which significant opposing viewpoints and/or multiple perspectives exist. Staff should guard against giving their personal opinions on sectarian or political questions or any other controversial sensitive issue. Issues should be presented impartially and in an atmosphere free of bias or prejudice, where there is fair representation of multiple perspectives. Before introducing the topic, staff will discuss it with the principal, and it must be approved for appropriateness to the course, appropriateness for the maturity of the students, approach to instruction, teaching materials to be used, and appropriateness of the content. The board prohibits acts of harassment, intimidation, or bullying, and that is defined to include harming a student emotionally or insulting or demeaning a student or group of students, causing substantial disruption with the orderly operation of the school. Any person may file a complaint. Retaliation is prohibited, and anyone found guilty is subject to disciplinary action, both students and adults. There are policies that address academic freedom. There are policies that address social studies, education. There are other policies that address instructional resources and material and how to implement these policies. You do not have to enact legislation. You can go back to the policies of your individual school boards that address these matters. We hold our superintendent, our building principals, who are the instructional leaders in buildings, responsible for making sure that these policies are implemented and that students are treated fairly and impartially. I have a list that I would love to leave with the committee where you can find these policies and some additional ones that I did not get to speak to this evening.
Ms. Grant, will you take a question from Representative Govan?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Grant. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Ms. Grant, could you tell us again, I'm sorry, what is your title?
Yes, sir. I am the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Richland School District 2.
Okay, Diversity and Inclusion Officer. Okay, this might be an unfair question, but if it is, then you can defer. I respect that. Just based on what you said, reading in terms of from the policy manual I take it that you are somewhat aware or have somewhat of a sense in terms of the curriculum and instruction activities that's going on in the district, would you not?
To some degree, yes, sir. I am not a trained educator. I'm an attorney by training.
Okay, I think that's pretty good. So, in your opinion, or based on what's happening in the district, do you think we are basically? Is there anything at all that would cause this committee to believe that our children are being indoctrinated in terms of one of the isms that was discussed earlier, Marxism, communism, Maoism, run the gamut, or basically are we just trying to ensure that our kids are able to think critically?
From my experience, Mr. Govan, no, our children are not being indoctrinated in our schools. We occasionally have situations that come up where questions arise as to whether or not this would be appropriate content, whether using it in this particular manner would be appropriate. I always ask our staff, whenever you have a question, discuss it with your principal first. We have district office staff that are available to answer it. Our goal is always to be on the proactive side to address it before the teacher implements it in a classroom. We are all human and sometimes mistakes are made, but I do not believe that overall, neither in my district or in the state of South Carolina, that teachers are in the classroom with the purpose of indoctrinating their own particular opinions and values on their students. Instead, they are trying to help create critical thinkers who can come one day and take the seats that you're holding now and be able to move us forward as a state.
And final question in terms of instruction, this was mentioned earlier, but do you see exercise at the district level in the administration of curriculum and instruction that is age appropriate?
Are you asking me, I'm sorry, repeat your question, I'm not sure I
understand. In terms
of
the administration of curriculum and instruction at the school level, that is being administered based on age appropriateness.
Yes, sir, that has been my experience. When I get calls, I am a resource to my entire school district. And when I get calls about whether or not something should be introduced, or if something was introduced and a parent has raised a concern about it, my first question is it in the standards given to us by the State Department of Education, and is it age appropriate? I tell my teachers, I will stand between you and everyone else. Sometimes I have to stand and make an apology if a mistake has been made, but more often than not, if you have gone through the process, if you have followed the policies, I can stand and say, we reviewed this material, we determined it was age appropriate, we determined that the manner in which it was used was appropriate, and it is for the good of our students.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative McDaniel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How you doing, Dr. Grant?
Wonderful. How are you this evening?
Good, good. Thank you for all the good work you do at Richland District 2. My question is, you've laid out the policies, and we appreciate you sharing the ones that address the matters of concern surrounding these bills. If someone come to your district and launch a complaint about a particular book that's being utilized, or app, or whatever, if you will, surrounding some of the concerns we've heard, and they don't think that you've done enough, then what would be the next appropriate step for those individuals or that individual?
We would request that they start at the principal level with a discussion about it. If it's a particular book or material that we're using, there is a policy that talks about the process. There's a form to fill out. A committee will review it. Of course, internally, those things can be appealed up through the superintendent to our Board of Trustees, and with the Board of Trustees having the final decision about it.
And once it leaves there, if they're still not satisfied, they can still appeal to the State Department.
The State Department of Education, as long as it is within their regulations to receive those kinds of complaints. Yes,
okay.
Ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing the information with us. And I think you will agree that what we are talking about today is not what's going on, and if it's going on, it's a bad apple. And we need to dispose of the bad apple versus trying to put something in place that could have major intended, or if you will, unintended, or if you will, intended, and I can go back and forth forever, consequences that could negatively impact not just our students, but also our teachers and society as a whole.
Yes, ma'am, and I would say more times than not, it's not even a bad apple. It may be a teacher who is just unaware of the
Thank you
process
much.
that needs to be used or has not received enough training on how to age appropriately deal with the content, or is going outside of the state standards.
And they should be given opportunities to correct.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, ma'am.
Representative Trantham.
Madam Chair, thank you. I've actually shared my question with Representative Britton, and I yield my time to him because he's
Hey,
going to ask the
Representative
question.
Britton.
Thank you.
I had the same question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Representative Trent. Thank you, Madam Chair. You spoke about the incidents that have happened and the process through with parents and the situations you deal with. I've made an inquiry to the Department of Education about any kind of incidents reports that have happened. And what I'm wondering is, are there any additional incident reports that you are aware of? And if there are, is there a way for us as legislators to get our hands on those? One, to see the criteria or actually the accusations or the questions concerning CRT. Also, though, to see whether there's been an increase or decrease in people opposing or people for CRT in the past. I mean, I'd like to say 5 years, to be honest with you, to get a better understanding of how we're moving towards whether, you've heard some people say it's politically driven completely. You've heard other people say it's been around since the 1960s. So I'd love to see some kind of behavioral contrast of where we are on complaints, where we are on the actions, and how we handle those actions, because I think that we're limiting ourselves if we're going to try to enact legislation based on a 5% problem or a 30% problem. So those would be very, very important to have for us. And I didn't know if you were aware of any data bank, anything that could give us some leeway or some forward thinking.
No, sir, I'm not aware of any collection of data that will answer your question. I can tell you that just over the last 2 to 3 years, I've had more inquiries in my office about it. I can tell you that at our school board meetings, we've had more public comment from our community about it, but I am not aware of any reports that are being formulated that would give you a number to say we've had an increase over year to year to year of X percentage points.
Okay, I understand via the State Department that they've had 24 complaints, of which they have worked with the districts to alleviate and correct and that kind of thing. So as to what the complaints were and that kind of thing, I don't know, but has to do with the overall of this. Representative Calhoun has a question for you, Ms. Grant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Dr. Grant, thank you for your work with the children and the instructors and the administration and whatnot. South Carolina is better because of our educational system. Just a quick, it's probably an easy question to answer and probably seems pretty simple, but the state provides for your standards or educational standards. The school district pretty much puts together their curriculum and their policies and their procedures there at the school district. And then the teacher herself will put together the syllabus for her classroom, which all works towards our educational system. The question is, are teachers in your district, and this is for everybody listening and streaming in, provided a copy of the standards when they're hired? Are they provided the state, the district's policies and procedures, and is training provided in these areas?
I'm going to answer it the best I can and only answer for Richland District 2 because I can't say what other school districts are doing. I don't know that a copy of the standards are provided at the time that teachers are hired. I do know that we provide extensive professional development within our district on what the standards are. We have an academics department that goes in and we have multiple people at the district level that support the building level for professional development of what the standards are. We have content specialists that go in to work with content teachers on what the standards are. Also to make sure that teachers are progressing through those standards in a timely manner so that, for example, in our courses that have end of the year exams, to make sure that they're moving on a pace so that students have all of the information that they need by the time they get to their end of the year course. And so I know that we provide that support to teachers in our district. The standards are available for anyone online. You can go to the State Department of Education and get the standards. We have links to it from our website as well for the standards to be there. And I'm sorry if there was another part of your question. It's late and I'm thirsty.
I apologize. It was a question about the policies and the procedures also being distributed.
I am not aware of them being distributed to teachers, but they are online, and all of our teachers have access to our website. Anyone has access to our website, and the policies are there on the website. We provide professional development to talk about particular policies. I have done several talking about this sensitive issues policy, and if you're going to talk about something in a classroom that could be sensitive, these are the steps that you need to go through. So we're trying to provide that information both generically available as a whole online, and then as to things that we see are of particular concern or have the potential to be concerning, to provide that in individual professional development trainings.
And I would guess that you would have leadership teams of seniority where you would expound upon the subject matter, which would include the policies and procedures and the standards, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Rivers has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, Ms. Grant, I was just curious about the CRT and all the discussions we're having. We've heard about the manufacturing crisis and all that kind of stuff. Every complaint, does it have merit, or can it just be a complaint just to be complaining?
Well, I guess to the person who's making the complaint, it has some merit. Not every complaint rises to the level of the need for action to be taken on it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Grant? If not, thank you, Ms. Grant.
Thank you,
So-
ma'am.